Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads podcast, a book podcast where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. And today we are going to be doing our first novel of the series. Today, we are looking at "This Is Where It Ends" by Marieke Nijkamp. I think I said their name right. I don't. I'm awful with names, so if I pronounced your name wrong, I do apologize. But this is our first novel that we are going to be covering for the podcast. Last episode, we did the How to Be a Boss by Lily Singh, a powerful memoir and self-help book. Well, this one is a huge alternative and a huge difference in theme. So this is where it ends. It actually tells a tragic story about a school shooting that is told from multiple perspectives over the course of just 54 minutes. The story unfolds at a high school where students attend what they think will be a normal assembly until a former student locks the doors and begins shooting. I will say that this book is very intense when it comes to themes and plot details. So I do wanted to say up front that if you are wanting to read this book beforehand, I just know that there are some very trigger warnings and content warnings. It does involve gun violence, death, injury, and physical harm. There is blood, grief, trauma, bullying, toxic and abusive family dynamics, and then there's also a lot of trigger warnings as well: death, mass shooting, emergency situations, panic and dissociation, suicide. So I just want to let you know that there are some trigger warnings and content warnings up there. Just make sure to uh, share those before reading the book. Uh, this book and the next books coming after this are going to be kind of in a different format as well. So how this is going to work, normally what I would do for book series like these is do a deep dive, kind of do a chapter by chapter, kind of do kind of a book club esque vibe. Well, a lot of these books I read about 2.5, 3 years ago. So instead of doing kind of more of a in-depth review, I'm just gonna kind of give a overview, a brief synopsis about what it is, maybe tell you a little bit about the characters, but not give away a lot about the plot. So these episodes from now until I do the newest Hunger Games book will not be the I wouldn't give the recommendations of like, oh, I highly suggest you read this before listening to this episode. There will be spoilers. You can listen to it without reading it, but if you still want to read the book, you're more than welcome to. I will put links in the description box and show notes about where you can find the book so that you can go to the book immediately for the description box. But other than that, without further ado, I would like to go ahead and dive on in. So, as always, what I like to do is I always like to kind of look over the cover of the book and kind of just share a little bit about what the cover looks like. And I really like the cover of the book. It's very truth telling to kind of the theme of it. The cover's all black. The title of the book is kind of written in this very creepy font, all in lowercase, and it has a tagline: "Everyone has a reason to fear the boy with the gun." I think that's a powerful tagline and quote to kind of have on the front of the book. And at the bottom of the book, there is four things of chalk: yellow, green, red, and blue chalk that looks like they have been shot with a gun. The It's kind of split and kind of cracked all the pieces of the chalk into little bits, and there's little chunks of chalk going anywhere with dust behind it. Um, if we're ranking covers, I really do like the cover. I would give this like 5 stars, 4 or 5 stars. It's very truth telling. It kind of sets the scene of where the story is going to take place without giving too many details away. So, I love I love the cover of the book. I think it's really good. Um, but let's kind of just do a deep dive. Let's just kind of go into it. We'll share a little bit about how this book is formatted, and we'll kind of get into some of our main characters. The book takes place, as I mentioned in the kind of the intro and a synopsis of the book, within a span of 54 minutes. It's told through multiple POVs. There's different perspectives. Most of them are half of them are Two of the students are inside the school and depicts what's happening inside the school, and two of the students are also outside of the school, so they're showing a little bit of what's happening on the outside. They kind of do a play by play about what's happening. I really like this because it gives you multiple perspectives from different locations about what's going on. I really like that. Really do like that. But the book really just opens up. It's a school assembly. All students are going to a mandatory assembly, and you know how they are when you walk in. There's people talking, they're distracted, they're texting their friends, everything just feels ordinary. But that normal moment is shattered when Tyler Brown, which is a former student and the main character, one of the main characters of the book, enters the auditorium with a gun and locks the doors. Suddenly, students realize they're trapped. Their phones begin buzzing, panic begins to spread, teachers are trying to control the situation, and outside the school, you can hear sirens begin to approach. It's very tall, it unfolds in real time. Each chapter is actually, and this is really neat, time stamped by time. So, for an example, one of the chapters it begins at 10 a.m. So, one of the chapters would be from chapter 4. This is just an example. Chapter 4, 10:05 to 10:07 a.m. And the chapters are all based off time and broken up into those little tidbits so that you kind of get an idea of what time it is and what's happening at that exact minute. Uh, but now we kind of get into our four perspectives. These are the four characters that are going to be telling us what is happening. So the first one, her name is Autumn. She is Tyler's sister, and she is trapped inside the auditorium when the shooting begins. But her situation is even more complicated because the shooter is actually her own brother. She is terrified not only for her life, but also for the lives of everyone around her. And throughout the story, she struggles with the guilt, confusion, and heartbreak. And she remembers the brother Tyler used to be before everything went wrong. There's a quote in here that I really think that really pinpoints the overall theme and the overall synopsis of this book. And it's that she said in one of the chapters, and just kind of a reflection, she says, "Fear doesn't shut you down, it wakes you up." I think that is a very powerful quote because when you hear about fear, it's a force that pushes characters to act. It to help them protect others and to survive. Whenever you're fearful of something, you are very much alert and awake. It wakes you up, it makes you alert about what's going on. And so she becomes one of the emotional anchors of the story because she's actually right in the middle of this. But our next character that will be telling us a little bit more about the outside is Sylvia. Now, Sylvia is Autumn's girlfriend, so there are some LGBTQ plus representation in the book. Sylvia isn't in the auditorium when the shooting begins. She's actually on the outside, so at first she doesn't know exactly what's happening. But when she learns that Tyler is responsible and that Autumn is trapped inside, she becomes desperate to help. So her perspective just shows the outside world reacting to the tragedy. So you'll get to see and witness the police coming, parents coming to the scene, students calling their loved ones, and it's evident that Sylvia's love for Autumn drives her to stay strong even when she feels hopeless. And her perspective reminds us that tragedies affect not only the people directly involved, but entire communities. The third narrator and the third perspective we'll get is Tomas or Thomas. I would assume it's Tomas because it has an accent mark over the A, but he is Sylvia's twin brother. He was actually late to the assembly as well, so his perspective is going to be outside the auditorium as well. And he was lucky to be late because there's that one small moment of luck changes everything. Instead of being trapped inside, he helps actually guide the injured students to safety. So he's kind of more the role of, oh, these students are coming out, they're coming out of the building, he's trying to get them to safety. Technically the unexpected hero of the novel, but he's also deeply afraid. He spends much of the story trying to save as many people as possible, while also worrying about Sylvia and Autumn as well, because she's obviously worried about Autumn, and Autumn's trapped inside the school. His actions show that bravery doesn't mean the absence of fear, but bravery means acting despite fear. At one point, he says a powerful quote and reflection. He says, "Sometimes the only way to survive is to keep moving forward." And that's right. When you are in a thing of survival, there's no chance of you to be able to think and ponder about decisions. You just got to keep going. You got to keep fighting. So this captures the urgency and desperation of the situation. Our fourth and final perspective that we'll get throughout the book is a character. Her name is Claire. Um, she has a very unique aspect to the story. Claire actually dated Tyler, who is the shooter of the novel. She understands pieces of his past that others don't. And so her story and her perspective kind of gives more about the history of Tyler, what he was like when they were in the relationship. She remembers the warning signs that were easy to ignore. And it's told through a lot of her memories, and we kind of get to see a little bit about how Tyler's anger and pain slowly built over time. Um, but the book doesn't actually excuses his actions. It actually instead raises difficult questions about bullying, mental health, and missed opportunities for intervention. So her perspective is one of the more reflective and heartbreaking because we get to kind of see a little bit more about his past and what kind of has happened to him over his life. And she represents the people left asking, what could we have done differently? Which I think is a very prolific question for any school shooting scenario. Um, this was very much a huge question I think every school goes through. Most kids, when they do this action, they stem it off from bullying, mental health reasons. Was seen as an outcast. And you do have to ask that question. If we had treated him differently or treated her differently, how would they have reacted? Would we still have this? Would they still have these feelings? You really don't know. So as I had kind of mentioned in the overall theme of the book, there's a lot of really tough themes that go on. One of the major themes in here is the prospect of fear and courage. So nearly every character is terrified. They still have to make choices to help others. Help hide fellow peers. They guide each other to exits. Teachers are trying to protect their students. It's There's a powerful quote from a character in this that says, "People are stronger than they think." Even in the darkest situations, human resilience can really shine through of showing that they are really careful or caring about their person. They're really caring about their surroundings. Now, obviously, with the thing being around school shootings and gun violence, there is a huge thing of violence played throughout the role. The novel doesn't glorify the tragedy. It actually shows the emotional and psychological toll that everyone is experiencing is involved with. They see shock, grief, and confusion. You get to witness the families what outside the school, not knowing if their children are safe. Friends struggle to understand how something like this could happen. And this story really does make readers confront the reality that school shootings affecting entire communities. You hear this on the news. It doesn't even affect communities, it affects people worldwide. Another thing, and I think this is one of the more lighthearted tones and themes of the novel, is friendship and love. Despite the tragedy, this novel really highlights powerful relationships. Friendships become lifelines, characters support each other even when everything feels hopeless. Autumn and Sylvia's relationship is especially meaningful. Their love gives them strength during the most terrifying moments of their lives. And in one emotional reflection, the story actually reminds us in this quote, "We hold on to the people we love. That's how we survive." When you love someone and you really are loving and you love that person, you want to survive for them and you want to keep going in life and support them. I think that's a really powerful quote. All right, the structure of the story. As I had mentioned, this story takes place all under an hour, or nearly an hour. The chapters are all time stamped. This actually makes the reader feel like they're experiencing the events minute by minute. They're very relatively short chapters. There are the multiple POV, but normally when you hear multiple POV, Um, each chapter you sometimes is kind of affiliated with that character. So say you're reading a book or this book and you were on chapter 5 and chapter 5 was all about Claire's backstory. You know, they kind of make the POV for each chapter be kind of chapter based so that that whole chapter will be from the story and then they kind of bounce around going on throughout the book. Well, this one actually goes through a lot of those feelings and a lot of those characters in the same chapter. It very much bounces off between each character very frequently throughout each chapter. So each chapter actually doesn't focus on one person, it actually focuses on multiple people. And sometimes they even do back and forth. So two people, like, for an example, I think there's a point in here where you kind of go from Sylvia's point of view, and then they go back to, and then they talk about Autumn's point of view, and then it goes back to Sylvia's. So there's also kind of those moments in here where you kind of go back and forth to the person. Some people could have mixed feelings about that. I actually did not mind it at all. I actually liked it, being able to kind of go back to the same person in each chapter. It this really creates suspense and emotional urgency. It's almost like watching a real-time documentary or like reading a documentary script. There's a whole lot of emotional moments in here, and there's so many to list, but of course, everything that I had really mentioned is emotional. The people losing loved ones, people not knowing where they are, people are sending out goodbye messages in case it is that fact that this could be their last minute or this could be their last day they know each other. One of the quotes that I really find hard from this for about the emotional is, "We're all just trying to make it through the day." This line reminds us how fragile normal life can be. That one moment everything is ordinary, and the next moment everything changes. And it's a thing that will happen and stay with you for years to come. So sadly, and I don't know for where most of my listeners are listening to, I don't know if you're from the United States, if you're outside, but if you're outside of the United States, you may know that school shootings here are very much common. This is a relatively common theme of what happens throughout the whole book or happens in our world. We basically have a shooting every day. This is a really important book because it does a very good job of depicting what happens in a school shooting situation. You have that sense of empathy. You have that sense of kindness, the importance of noticing when someone is struggling, the power of community during a tragedy. There's so many of these deep, important things that this book does really well, and I really do appreciate that. It's sad that this is a, a thing, and I remember when I was reading this book, this was during a time when there was a really bad school shooting in Texas. Um, I can't pinpoint and I can't fully remember the school, but I if you it was I think 2022. If you remember in 2022 there was an awful school shooting in Texas. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what happened there. You kind of are understanding. I read this book right when that shooting happened. And it was just a heartbreaking thing, and it was kind of a weird timing of like we're reading this and we have like the most awful school shooting in history happen. It was just really weird. So, to wrap things up, today's episode, we're going to wrap this very uh, kind of deep conversation about this book. I loved the book. Um, I am glad that this was actually my first novel that I read for my reading journey. And of course, if you heard my reading journey story, this was right when I first started loving reading again. So this was the second book I read, first novel, and I thought it was a great, great choice. I love the pacing in it. The pacing is not slow. It very much it's fast paced. When they actually at the beginning, because I thought, oh, they'll set up the scene, you'll get to learn all the characters and whatnot. Literally, they started doing like the main action, I think, within like the first chapter or two. And that's like a huge, like, oh, they don't push it. The author don't play around. They don't play around. So I thought that the author did a really good job of pinpointing and describing what fully happens in these books and about the school shooting. You know, I've never witnessed it. Luckily, I never had to witness a school shooting in my lifetime. I know a lot of kids probably cannot say that, but I was lucky enough to not really witness that. So I can't really say for myself what if this was actually pinpointed true, but I have a feeling that this uh, did a really good job of explaining it from just like an outsider not experiencing it. I think that it's a really good depiction of what happens. So I give this book 5 stars. I really love this book. I highly recommend it. If you're someone that has a lot of, if you can't really handle death or very high intense impacts, take breaks when reading it because it, of course, is very tough on the topics and it does not shy away from anything. It's very much straight to the point in your face. And it really, really is a huge it's an important read. I highly recommend this book for people. So yeah, 5 stars. Marieke or Marieke. I don't know how to pronounce her name. So if I'm saying, I'm just gonna call her or Mar. Mar. If this you did a really good job with this book. Um, Loved it. But now I would love to hear your thoughts. Tell me a little bit about what, if you've read This Is Where It Ends, tell me in the comments. Share with me, reach out to me on social media. There will be a Instagram post that kind of gives a little bit more of my review on there. It's not going to go in full depth, but there is also a post on my Instagram that will be posted right when this episode is live. So by the time this episode is up, that Instagram post is up. Comment on there and tell me what you thought about the book. I'd love to have some discussions with you guys about what you thought. What moment stayed with you the most? What lessons did you take away? Um, if you liked the book, if you hated the book, tell me why. But until next time, I appreciate you all so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked it, please feel free to subscribe or follow the podcast so that you'll get notified of when new episodes come out. Feel free to follow me on the socials. I am available on a lot of the social media platforms. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at southern.reads. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. I'm also on Goodreads, Fable, Storygraph, and Margins. If you want to follow me on any of those, I will put links to those into my description box and in the show notes. As clickable links. So just feel free to click on those links and you can follow me on there. You can actually see what I'm reading and catch up to see what I have read in the past so that you can have a kind of a little sneak peek of what some episodes are coming up. Our next book that we are going to cover is actually going to be another biography, or actually the next two are going to be biographies or autobiographies by the same person. So I'm excited to see those. One's actually kind of a reflection of a very tragic day in Alabama history, and the second book that we'll cover after that will be kind of a uh autobiography about a famous meteorologist in the state. So those are some hints that you can kind of get. I'd love to hope to see you in the next episode. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will catch you and see you all in the next episode of Southern Reads.